Hello everyone who is watching this video. Recently there has been an array of Minecraft YouTube videos where persons would revisit a game save that they have abandoned for years to share their impressions with their respected audiences. I, on the other hand, did not abandon my Minecraft world save from 2012 and have been continuously working on it since. So I thought it would be a great idea if I share it with whoever will find this video, and hopefully as a result of that I can inspire more people to be better builders at Minecraft such as myself. Let's state a few things straight. This matter is not of a single video, but of a series, which probably would result in up to 5 to 7 videos. In each video, I will show a particular part of my world and show how it has progressed through the years from Kony 2012 to Kanye 2020, so stay tuned for more. Now, the topic of today's video will touch only a particular place in my world which later grew into a size of a city, covering 8 years of hard work and suffering. This was the place where I started playing Minecraft and built my first mansion that later grew into a city. Its name was once called Gorod, which is a city in Russian. Then it became the capital of a once mighty imaginary kingdom of mine by the name of Stolitsa, which is a capital in Russian, and in 2018 it changed its name and pronouns to Tsaritsyn, named after a Russian city on the Volga River. 3 Russian things in one single paragraph. Now let's check out the trailer. One of my closest to this day friends has shown me this game and I immediately dived into it. I was astonished by the amounts of freedom and creativity this game is allowing, while sometimes becoming scorned by the little amount of furniture and realism it has provided. Nevertheless, I loved it no matter its flaws. The earliest region file in my Minecraft save appears to be modified last at March 13th, 2012. I wonder if it was Friday, which will be marked as the time when the world was first created. In the first day, as I recall, I built some sort of a royal mansion on an unclaimed land with walls around it. It later was to become my permanent residency for the whole year, but nevertheless I wasn't satisfied. I had a royal mansion, but I didn't have peasants to work for it like you know who, and it seemed illogical for me to have a mansion in the middle of nowhere just by itself. So I decided to dismantle some of my walls to make a room for a street that would have little houses around it for the peasantry. Yes, in this time I thought that the best street should be made out of colored wool and be extremely narrow, just like in medieval age Europe. The houses were made out of wood to single out the inequalities between the social status of royalty and the peasantry, just like in real life, I thought. Nevertheless, I envisioned myself to be a good king, so I built a marketplace or a bazaar around the settlement so that people could boost the economy by buying stuff like cake. Then I also thought to myself that it isn't perfect and the place is too small, so I had to expand even more. The next building were corrals and second brick building beside my residency that became 3 floors tall. it became my laboratory. At this time, it didn't seem enough for me to have a small town with a king in it in the middle of nowhere. So I decided to settle for another town, but that I will cover up later, probably in the second one. After the second town had a few buildings, I moved back for the first town, where I decided to build an even bigger wall, in which my gorod would gradually expand upon. Then I decided to make a suburb for the gorod, and to make it more realistically, I decided to build those houses only from wood. I built it right behind the walls. This was me trying to parody a typical medieval city structure, with a castle, the inner city, the wall, and the outer city. Typical planning, only without a good old church or a cathedral, because fuck that. After a few weeks of playing, I decided to beat the highest building in my world by building an even larger building that is wooden-like tower inspired by Ostankino Tower in Moscow. I know it's not in any way similar, but that was a mind of a 12-year-old boy who made that after a month of playing Minecraft, so keep that in mind. But nevertheless, this became the tallest building in my Minecraft world for a few years, totaling at 27 blocks. I also remember myself rewatching Mars Attacks, a C-rate alien invasion movie that I was horny for during my childhood and early adolescence. It gave me a great building idea, and for a few days straight I continued to think about it, how it would look like if it was in Minecraft. By the looks of it, I was copying a landmark hotel, and it didn't really seem that way. Anyways, I was mostly concerned by the interior design rather than the exterior.
Sure, Jan.
After that, I built a couple of more small buildings around Gorod and shifted my focus to other cities and to doing experimenting, or to put it frankly, exploding the shit out of everything I see using TNT and pouring lava on it. An activity that I will be sorry for in the following years to come, as some buildings were destroyed and never captured on screen, and most importantly, I would have to clean my room after the mess that I've made. Some of the repercussions of such an activity came in the form of a creation of a Civ 5 natural wonder of Lava Lake Victoria. It became an area of active volcanoes and geysers, with some reaching up to 30 blocks in height, higher than my parody copy of Ostankino Tower, instead of being just a normal sea. Well, at least it supplied my tiny nation with 6 food for a few years. As I got tired doing that, I started spawning mobs and pretending as if they were my citizens, where a skeleton was to be assigned as a guard, while other mobs had also some sort of a special role that I don't remember. Around the same time, I started building catacombs under my mansion and secret tunnels that I could use to escape in the case of an alien invasion. Eventually, I got tired doing so and found something really cool that would keep my mind busy for a long time, and that was Rails. Yes, Rails, and it is important to mention that they had a practical application, since I did not fully understand how to fly properly at the time, and oftentimes I could not land my ass on the ground. So in order to commute from one place to another, I had to use a railroad system, and therefore I immediately began constructing it. It quickly became the most ambitious project of 2012, culminating in 2 large bricked bridges between Holodny and Gorod. Holodny is the city that I will talk about next video. Now let's return to a bridge that would penetrate through a mountainous sea of lava, which is probably the most eye-catching scenery before 2014. The rest of 2012, as I recall, I spent building 3 and above floor high skyscrapers, with the most ones tallest being in Gorod. The skyscrapers that I built were inspired largely by an Israeli architecture, mainly from Tel Aviv, since at the time I lived near Tel Aviv, and for me that was, as folks say these days, the shit and the only source of inspiration. In late 2012, my father decided to move to Canada, so he took my laptop away with him, and I had to put the Minecraft save onto my USB. I continued to play the save file on other people's computers time to time, mostly focusing my attention on Gorod and another new city, which later will be referred to as Centralia. The buildings were all of Tel Avivian architecture. During one of those days, when in early 2013, my save file was deleted in some unfortunate circumstances that I cannot recall. Thus, I couldn't play any further until I got into the possession of my old computer, but that will only happen way in 2014, and all the progress that I've made after my laptop was taken away was lost. When I have recovered my save file, I was not ready to rebuild all the buildings that I have previously built, although some of them were really beautiful. Instead, I decided to add some atmosphere into the game and focused my attention on improving the general feeling of the world. I became so immersed by it that I even created an entire narrative around the story of each city. And the story of Gorod was once a big capital dominating the whole kingdom became weakened by the increasing power of another big city called Centralia, and as a result of that, the arrangement and improvement of this city of Gorod became delayed to a point when it looked like a 4-year-old kid's playground compared to other cities that grew at the time, having roads that reached 7 blocks in diameter, unlike Gorod. The situation was so bad that, in the style of Russian and French revolutionaries, I decided to destroy the living hell out of this backward dump, and on its bones I built a brand new city that I later named Tsaritsyn. The process of that destruction is unfortunately not documented since I miss almost a year in screenshots, so I assume the Grand Perestroika took place somewhere in the early to mid 2015. The old look of the city was entirely gone, except some of the walls and the first mansion that I built on the map. The city now resembles some sort of a broadly American architecture of the 60s mixed with some of that Las Vegas aesthetics to it. This was an attempt to build a unique architecture of Tsaritsyn based on the experiences of the other 3 emerging cities that already gone through that phase. Back when I was making the Perestroika, I lived in North York, which is a part of Toronto, and my friend and I decided to put a big old fresco store right outside the mansion, which completely ruined the old feeling of the city, and I generally regard it as a downgrade. Buildings together with the mansion were incompatible to each other. Other than that, there was some real innovation. Instead of the old railway system, the city has built a fully functioning railway between itself and Centralia, the largest city at the time and now, and it was an underground railway or a metro. Tsaritsyn after the Perestroika didn't feel much good. It didn't have that Russian feeling that it's supposed to have as I envisioned, but couldn't incorporate it properly. Even the monotone Soviet architecture was executed better at other cities than here. The city was built out of buildings with different styles that didn't live in harmony with each other. Its planning was mostly a failure, with many buildings later abandoned and destroyed. The Sea of Lava and the 2 cool bridges that I loved to walk on were gone, and replaced by a cheap stone bridge that was never finished and looked like an extended tongue of a stoned reptile or a rocky boner of a sheet of paper. For the next year and a half, it became stagnating so much that it was the 4th or 5th most populated city in my world, instead of being the first one as it was in 2012. I generally didn't feel building anything in that city at the time, until it became so ugly that I decided to fix up some of the things without radically destroying it. Early in 2016, I became interested in Slavic aesthetics and spiritualism and tried to give this city a certain Slavic look to justify its name of Tsaritsyn. Instead of using a lot of wood in my style, or even building a huge structure in the form of a ladder with three stripes on it powered by kvass or compot, I stumbled upon a very interesting page on Minecraft forum with a very cool tower in the style of a Russian Orthodox church with an onion-shaped dome. I didn't know how to use any editing programs at the time, so I had to copy it, but instead of copying it perfectly, I created my own tower based on the tower that I've seen on the site, and it became one of the most eye-catching landmarks of the world for a few years to come. Also, it became the most tallest building in the city, totaling at 84 blocks. But unfortunately, other buildings were terrible compared to this one. After half a year, I decided to improve upon it and rebuilt my original mansion, being inspired by Pashkov's house in Moscow, an example of an architecture that is called Russian neoclassicism. This building was truly a great success that I was proud of. I would even show this to my friends, and some of them wouldn't even believe that I made it. After my precious ego was boosted, I started constructing the final project of 2017 that was a huge university that became the third university that I ever built in the world. I modeled it after some American city hall that I don't remember the name of. Besides that, nothing really happened to the city. For about 2 years, there mostly were demolitions and plans for a new reconstruction. Somewhere in the middle of 2019, I began the construction that was between the area of Tsaritsyn and Kishinev. The speed of the construction accelerated very fast as I wanted to return Tsaritsyn its past glory and make it truly a beautiful place to visit, just like Centralia and my other cities. The style that I used this time resembled a style of a hybrid of Russian and Western European city culture. I subscribed to Russian neoclassicism and used it greatly in construction of many of the buildings to resemble the previously built Pashkov's house and even rival it. Such buildings were the Russian Duma, or the parliament, and this green building that is mixed with Gothic style, although is neoclassical in nature. Those advancements came in the logical result after my previous work in the city of Centralia and Edmonton for more than a year straight, and this can be considered a specific Russian application and modification to my previous work that justified the name of the city. Besides that, if you look closely at the row houses that I built at Slavyanskaya Street or the Slavic Street, you can even see the examples of Russian Renaissance revival architecture in some of the buildings, as well as Art Nouveau and some signs of broad European borrowing. The ideas from those buildings I took from some Minecraft servers, and most importantly, from flying around Russian city streets on Google Maps. Later, I decided to build some houses out of wood to pay tribute to the past of the city, and I built a few good houses in my opinion, such as the house on Pushkinskaya, the harbor, and some wooden mansion and the adjacent building to it. All of the buildings that were once in Kishinev were removed and rebuilt in a new period in a much better style. Besides that, there arose a small local center with a plaza where in each building I was exploring a new style. I also remember how I wanted to construct in Minecraft a house that I once lived in real life but never managed to finish it. I thought it would take a lot of time, so I had to put it on hold just for now. Approximately at the same time, by using some Russian hacking, I copied a bridge from some obscure Minecraft server onto this map, because I didn't know how to properly build bridges myself, it seems, unfortunately, yet nevertheless, I reworked it a bit so that it would resemble the architecture of the place. While I might be a good architect, I am not a good urban planner. The streets are still too small to this day, in my opinion. Distance between houses as if it was some obscure Italian city. Sadly, even to this day, the roads are only half done, with each differing from each other because I haven't even figured out which style excites me the most. By the end of 2019 to now, the city is only harmonious in certain places. It is divided between its 2015 part, its 2016 to 17 part, and its 2019 part. If you are in the 2019 part, everything looks fine and harmonious, with gardens, town squares, and buildings similar to each other. But when you go back to the 2015 part, you feel disgusted. This picture is pretty useful to look at. If you want to continue looking at it, you can pause this video because we are moving to a concluding part of this video. From January until April, I put this map on a Minecraft server because I was curious what other people would do with it, and as a result of that, so many of my cities were partially griefed by people. Half of the damage I have fixed, but the other half, it seems, is left for this video. That being said, we will only look at Tsaritsyn for now and not at other damages. What happened is that people largely disrespected the work that I've made and simply griefed and scavenged it just for the sake of destroying it. Some band of Georgians even decided to build a very ugly hut on the chicken's legs right in the middle of my expansion area, giving absolutely no fucks for the environment, and even wrote something in their language that I won't even bother translating. This has pushed me to have certain thoughts, and I have decided that in order to keep the old look of the city and most importantly keep it intact, I had to ask people to get off my lawn or shut down the server. And on that note, the development of Tsaritsyn has stopped, at least for now, until I figure out what to do next. Though I would say it was an interesting evolution of my architecture in the light of this place, but you can have your own opinion, and besides, I would love to hear your opinion, so please write it in the comments. Anyhow, subscribe to this channel now, and when the channel grows, you can see yourself as one of the first people to see its early steps, so that you can reflect at the transformation of the channel in the future.